Mr. Graves, I do agree with you that the Gulf states have been used as guinea pigs, and we saw a tremendous, maybe the worst environmental disaster of all time last summer. There has not been yet any legislation produced in this Congress that would implement the safety recommendations from the Blue Ribbon BP Spill Commission. Would you putting those recommendations on the books so that we implement the safety lessons from that Spill Commission, so that we don't it's a guinea pig, yes, but we learned the lessons, and now we're going to put the safety measures in place?
Congressman, I think that I did read the report months ago when it came out. I do recall there being some very appropriate recommendations in that report and attempts to improve safety. I think, in addition, looking at some of the efforts that the industry have undertaken.
Now, but none of the recommendations of the BP Spill Commission have been put on the books yet. So would you support us adopting legislation to accomplish that goal so that the guinea pig doesn't have a successor incident?
Congressman, I'll say two things in response. First of all, I think that there were a number of very appropriate recommendations were included in that report, and I'd be happy to go through and not all the safety recommendations, no, sir. I'd be happy to go through.
Okay. So do you want those recommendations put on the books or not?
Again, Congressman, in total, no. I think that there were some very valid recommendations.
Do you think we should raise the liability cap from $75 million for the oil industry?
I do.
So that they should be responsible for the unlimited damages which they cause. Do you agree with that?
I do. And to be clear, Congressman, I agree with you that I do not believe that current law was appropriate or was sufficient in responding to the BP oil spill.
Yeah, I think that might be a good subject for us to twin here as well as we're moving forward, so that we understand that this isn't just going to be a one-way street, that it's just anything the oil and gas industry want, that we have the concomitant safety recommendations put on the books as well. Ms. Alexander, I know you haven't had a chance to review the legislation which Mr. Holt and I are going to introduce to take back that $150 billion, which in retrospect, obviously, we couldn't afford in the end of 2006. Would you be supportive of ending those kind of giveaways of federal money to the states, given what we realize is a fiscal calamity that we're facing as a country?
As you say, I haven't reviewed the legislation. We'd have to take a look at it. But since in general we do think that revenues from federal waters should go back to the federal taxpayers, we'd absolutely be inclined to look favorably on legislation that would reverse that.
So you see this bill as well, or the potential proposal which will emanate from the hearings which we're having today. How do you view that in terms of the potential harm to the federal taxpayers and the bond rating of our country, which obviously is very fragile?
Well, I think that, at this moment when there's clearly very little appetite, if you look at the entire Congress, for raising taxes, and there is a need for revenue. There's still some appetite for some services from government, although obviously a lot of controversy about what those should be. I think it's just the wrong time to take revenues away from the federal coffers. These are federal waters. They are 6 miles or 9 miles or more off the shores of states. It would be difficult to map them, and we wanted, the consequences, as Mr. Garrett said, the consequences are going to be paid for by the federal government. They are. So I think taking the revenue away from the federal taxpayer is the wrong thing to do.
Now, in April, May, and June of 2010, BP, because of their negligence off of the coast of Louisiana, created the worst environmental disaster in history. In April, May, and June of 2011, they've just reported $5.6 billion worth of profits. But the majority is insisting that, notwithstanding those historic profits, that they continue to keep tax breaks, which obviously are not needed to get them to go out there and to drill. Do you think it's a good idea for us to, as part of any grand bargain, to reclaim those $4 billion a year in tax breaks, which we give to big oil to drill where they're going to drill anyway, because they're like fish swimming and birds flying. The oil companies drilling, and they're making huge profits.
We've been on record for a long time for repealing the vast majority of oil and gas tax breaks. I think that this is an industry that has ample market incentives to encourage production to keep going. The market should be sufficient to encourage the kind of production that we need to maintain our energy needs. I think the more our position as an organization is that the energy sector needs to kind of come back from the federal subsidies and get a more level playing field by reducing the oldest and biggest subsidies first. And some of the oil and gas subsidies have been on the books for 100 years. It's hard to say that they're getting off the ground.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.